Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is the John freaking Muir Pod. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, let's get to this week's guest, a thru hiker with some stories to share, including some very recent stories. Welcome to the John freaking Muir Pod, Britt McDonald. How's it going, Britt?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Doc. I'm look forward to chatting.
I've been really anticipating this episode, so I'm glad it's finally here.
Super excited.
Now, Britt, I know you've got a lot of miles under your feet out there on the trail. Have you picked up a trail name along the way?
I did. I quickly took up the name with Puddin. I guess you can blame the Alabama accent on that one. I was hanging out with a bunch of Northerners, and my friend Hot Mess Express was actually eating chocolate cheesecake. And they had this whole story about how this trail angel provided the cheesecake, and I was over in the limbo world. And I finally come moseying around. I'm like, holy moly, that looks like chocolate pudding. And needless to say, it stuck.
Now, wait a second. You had a buddy out there named Hot Mess Express?
I did. It was a she, Hot Mess Express.
And what do you know the story behind that trail name?
Anytime you try to get a picture with her, she was a hot mess.
Got it.
So it eventually took over. Yeah.
Now, I am assuming from your pronunciation that Puddin is without a G.
It is without a G.
Just an apostrophe in place of the G, or is it just Puddin?
Oh, you definitely have to have the apostrophe. Puddin apostrophe.
Yeah, it's fine to talk in the dialect as long as we are grammatically correct. I totally agree with you. Because this is not the John freaking Muir Pod. This is the John freaking Muir Pod. I feel like we're kindred spirits already.
Oh, love it. Love it.
All right. Hey, Puddin, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
I've listened to a few episodes.
Okay. So you are aware of a segment that comes towards the end of the episode called the hiking hack. It used to be, I assume you've been listening to season 5 because season 6 is not out yet at the time of this interview. Season 5 and before, it's called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. We've rebranded that a little bit for season 6. We now call it the hiking hack. And that's where you'll have a chance to share with our listeners some trail wisdom to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
Sounds good.
Do
I
you
have
already
to come
have?
up with some stuff.
I was going to ask. Do you already have something in mind?
Oh, I don't know. There's quite a few things that run to my mind.
All right. We'll see what it is when we get there.
All right.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company Six Moon Designs. Now, Puddin, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you've got to have it out there. And this can be any type of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. Puddin, what is that item in your toolkit?
Oh, this can be hard. I'd have to say my fanny pack. I use the Versa with Hyperlight, and I feel like how easily I always go and grab my phone. It's just easily accessible. So I feel like my fanny pack, it's snacks on deck, phone on deck, ready to roll.
Nice. I also subscribe to the fanny pack theory. I've worn a fanny pack out there multiple times. It's very handy, very accessible to get to the stuff you use on a frequent basis. But I've gotten some strange looks out there. Have you also gotten a piece of the fanny pack haters out there?
Oh, definitely. You can definitely see some judgment every now and then. But in a way, though, like you said, it's easily accessible. Like long distance hiking, when you're getting ready for that hitch and things are just like going 90 to nothing, you just grab that fanny pack and you have all the little valuable accessibles. I just feel like I'm ready to go. But yeah, I definitely get some weird, strange looks every now and then. They're like, what are you doing back in like old school?
And so what does your backpack look like if you have a fanny pack? Do you not have hip belts or pockets on the hip belt?
I do. I use the Hyperlite, the 24 junction. It does have the good hip belts, but I actually have the 14 Pro. So I feel like my phone is like huge. It's like a mini tablet. So when it goes in the hip pocket, I can make it fit, but I have to work with it and work with the zippers. And to me, it's too big of a headache. I just like the flop in, flop out kind of thing.
Got it. Flopping in, flopping out. Sounds good. All right. Hey, let's keep talking about gear. And to help us with that, we've got...
It's the hiking pole.
The hiking pole. And Puddin, that's spelled P-O-L with 2 L's, like a survey, not like the things you hold in your hands out there.
Okay.
I like to explain that every time because I think I'm pretty clever coming up with that. What do you think?
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
I like it.
Not even clever, but interesting. Very polite. Very polite. I like it. All right. So this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me give you a score from 1 to 100 on the sanity scale, with 1 being completely insane, 100 being completely sane.
All right.
All right. Now, if I were to ask your friends and family to give Puddin a score on the sanity scale, where do you think they'd rank you?
Oh, probably 3.
3. Wow. Okay. There's an automatic 25 deduction for anybody who's done the AT before. So your highest possible score right now is 75.
Oh, I think it's going to keep getting slimmer.
Okay. All right. So these are 7 questions, all hiking related, and it's not rapid fire. I don't want to go through seven questions in 10 seconds. I want you to give me your answer and also give me some explanation. That'll help me with my calculation on how crazy you exactly are.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Question number 1. Pretty easy one, I think. Trekking poles or no?
Trekking poles.
And here's where the explanation part comes in.
Okay, touche. So I feel like the trekking poles, to me, I feel like they save my knees for the future a little bit. Like with the long distance hiking, I'm almost 30, but I feel like my knees feel like they're like 60 already. So I feel like if I don't give them a little grace, my body's going to be just ruined. And then the second one is for the tent, ultralight tents. They use the trekking poles. So I feel like 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, I talked to a guy recently who was not a big fan of trekking poles, but he had to bring 1 for his tent.
Long story short, I actually carried 1 a lot, but that's just because I would lose 1 and then I would carry 1 and then I would end up with another pair and then I would like lose 1 or leave it in someone's vehicle. Then I'm like left with 1. We played that game for a while.
Wow. So you have a habit of losing stuff then. That's a interesting pattern out there.
When it comes to trekking poles, yeah.
I think you were misnamed. You should have been Hot Mess Express.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Depends on the day.
Question number 2. What's on your feet, boots or trail runners?
Trail runners. I feel like I've definitely tried both, but I feel like long distance, the trail runners, they just dry out faster. They're breathable. I feel like they give my foot more flexibility. I've tried many different trail runners. To me, I find Topo. Topo fits really well on my feet. I feel like they're the roomy toe box like the Ultras, but you still have that same drop as the Hoka. I feel like I'm a good middle.
Got it. And about how many miles do you get out of your Topos?
Oh, it really depends on the terrain, but maybe 700, 800.
So did you run through about 3 pairs of those on the AT?
I actually found Topos at the end of my journey on the AT. So Topos is actually my 5th pair of shoes. Yeah. But after I found Topos, I have kept Topos. So I probably went through, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 more pairs since then.
All right. If it works, keep using it, right? So
yeah. Don't fix what's broken.
That's right. All right. Question number 3. When it comes to your shelter, do you prefer a tent, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or hey, let's just cowboy camp?
Ooh, that's tough. I go between cowboy camping and just putting up my tent. Usually I put up my tent if it depends on the weather or if it's like super, super cold. I can't stand it. But other than that, you're going to catch me cowboy camping. I just feel like something under the stars and the fresh air. And after you cowboy camp so many times, I almost feel claustrophobic in my tent. But if I had to choose, I still carry my tent as my backup.
All right. Any encounters with any creepy crawlies while you cowboy camped? I know that's a big fear of a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I've got pinched or stung by a scorpion, whichever that's happened. But besides that, nothing absolutely crazy. I've had a little possum run through camp, but nothing too wild.
Okay. Question number 4. When it comes to your sleep system, do you use a sleeping bag or a quilt?
A quilt. I'm a big side sleeper and I like to bring it all up together and make my own little pillow and squish it up. So I'm definitely a quilt.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know how side sleepers use a sleeping bag. It's just so constricting.
Yeah, I feel like my legs are like in lock. Yo, they just need to come up and move.
All right. What is your base weight? This is not part of the poll. Just curiosity if you're using a quilt and a trekking pole tent.
So my base weight before this crazy run I just did were maybe 18, 19 pounds. I actually just upgraded some stuff though too. So I should go down a few more pounds on my next stretch.
Okay. What did you upgrade?
I actually upgraded my quilt. For the entire journey, I used the Outdoor Vital quilt and I just switched to Enlightened Equipment's quilt. So I'm really excited. It's like the 950 down. So I can't wait. And then I just tried a new brand trekking pole called the Tray. They're about an ounce lighter and they're carbon fiber and aluminum. So I'm anxious to give them a shot too.
Saving an ounce right there. Very nice. Do you also cut your toothbrush in half?
I do. Guilty.
All right. This is factoring into your score, even though these aren't official questions. So that's good. All right. Hey, when it comes to food, do you need to have a stove out there? Are you cold soak or stoveless?
Oh, that's a great question. Normally, I would say stove. The entire time I first began my journey on the AT, I was like, there is no way I'm cold soaking. I'm not doing that. But this actual last run of the Pinhoti, I actually ditched the stove and I tried cold soaking for the first time. Definitely went better than expected, but I still have a huge learning curve to do.
Now, what kind of recipes did you use in your cold soak?
I winged it a little bit. For breakfast, I did oatmeal, but I mixed it with some like nuts and seeds. I used the breakfast essential packet. I used like a scoop of protein and I let that soak overnight. That wasn't terrible. You have to be careful with the protein ratio. I put a little too much in it one time, a little too chalky. And then you put too much seeds and then it's like too crunchy. And then you get too much water and it turns into like soup. So I tried a little bit of couscous. I did some like chicken packets and couscous. I tried a little bit of honey, basics. Ramen turned out, I really don't think you could make ramen bad. But just a few basics. I'm still tiptoeing, I should say.
Got it. Now, were you alone when you were cold soaking? Were you hiking alone?
I actually had a hiking partner, but they refused to, they didn't share their stove.
See, that's the problem. In my opinion, that's the problem is if you're alone, you can probably make it work because you don't know any better, right? Because you're just in that zone, you're doing your thing. But if you are hiking with somebody else who has a stove, when you get to camp and they're eating something nice and hot, that's when I get real bad stove envy, and it just doesn't work for me. I can't hold out.
Oh yeah, I was doing great until they're like, "Oh, try my rice," and I'm like, "Oh, yours tastes a lot better, all hot and warm." And I'm like, "Okay, I was doing good till I tried it."
That's right. Slippery slope. Watch out.
Yeah, for sure.
Question number 6. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Ooh, I don't know if I can answer this because I feel like, of course, the trail is always better above the tree line, but I feel like it's the things that you learn under the tree line that get you above the tree line that matters.
Explain.
It's like everyone's chasing the mountaintop or you're wanting to get to that next mountain, but I feel like what you learn along the way that kind of gets you there sometimes. And I feel like or in my case, I look so much at the end goal sometimes that when reality it's the journey that gets you to the end goal. So to me, when I think of that question, I think of above the tree line. That's amazing. You got your views, you're on top of the world, but I feel like sometimes you have to get to the tree line. And then it makes it so much rewarding. Really just depends.
I like that explanation. We've talked a lot about on this podcast about enjoying the moment, staying in the moment, trying not to focus on the end goal and how you miss out on so much when you don't stay in the moment. I've never had it quite phrased like you just said, where the mountaintop or the mountain pass is typically or could be a goal that you're shooting for, and you're always looking forward to that, and you miss out on what's happening around you down in the trees.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Nice.
I feel like sometimes it's what you build in the trees that gets you up to the top.
Okay. Very wise, Puddin. Very wise. Question number 7, last question in the poll. What's more important, pack weight or luxury items?
Do we have a time frame? How long are we hiking for?
Let's say you're on the AT. Are you focused on trying to get down to 12-pound base weight, or is it okay to bring some luxury items?
I guess I favor the luxury items. I probably carry a little too many. I did realize that on this very last stretch that I attempted, I got rid of all my luxury items. It was difficult. I don't know if I would do that for a long. This is just a short week, so I was able to do that. But something like the Florida Trail and the AT and something big, I have my luxury items.
See, that's interesting. I thought you were going to go the other way, saying, okay, if it's a short trip, then I'll carry the extra weight. I'll carry the luxury items. But if it's a long trip, I'm carrying the pack for an extended period of time, it's going to be as light as possible. You went the exact opposite. You said, hey, if I'm going to be out there for months, I am definitely going to have some luxury items. If it's a short trip, I can make do without the luxury items. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I'm backwards because the way I look at it, the least amount of time we're out there, you can go without those luxury items. But the longer that you're out there, you need that little break or dusk or the little itch. But I guess I'm completely backwards.
I like your way of thinking. It's very unique. Now, if we were to look in your bag, what kinds of luxury items might we find?
Oh, I'm guilty of Q-tips. Guilty of Q-tips. You'll definitely find a court ball. That thing is like my saving grace. You would probably find the one extra pair of socks that people would argue that say I don't need, but somehow I always need them and somehow they're never enough. And let's see, what's another little luxury? Probably my teeth flossers too, if that's a luxury item.
Those aren't very heavy luxury items. None of those weigh in excess of, I don't know, 4 ounces, especially not the floss. So yeah, okay, you're bringing some luxury items, but it's not backbreaking. I talked to a French guy, and he said his luxury item was a charcuterie board.
What?
you can't travel without a charcuterie board. I mean, you're just crazy if you don't have one of those in your pack.
I think the court ball is probably the craziest I got in my bag.
All right, that's great. Puddin, I need you to stand by. We're going to take your answers. We're going to run through the John Freaking Repod algorithm. I got to do some math here. So we're going to, let's see, I got to carry the 3. I'm going to divide that by root 5, multiply by pi. And we're going to adjust for the level of pain that a scorpion bite that you received during cowboy camping, what that impact is on you. And I come up with a score of 32.
32.
32, higher than you expected, higher than what your friends would say.
A little bit, yeah. I think you're giving me a little bit more credit.
Probably. We've just met, though. As we go through the interview, you might lose some points. We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. I may gain some, too.
You might, but it's doubtful. Don't get your hopes up. All right. Hey, Puddin, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up a little bit. Tell us about your background, where you grew up, what kinds of sports and hobbies you were involved in, and how did you get involved in the thru hiking cult?
Ooh, all right. So a little about me. I'm from this little small town of Halo, Alabama. I graduated there. I was actually a majorette and a band nerd. So I really wasn't super athletic, but majorette it did require a little athletic work. The older I got, I realized it. I played clarinet, bass clarinet, and twirled a baton. That got me all the way up until I went to college. I went to the University of North Alabama. I went on a little majorette scholarship. So I
No
did
way.
that for another 4 years.
There are
Yeah.
majorette scholarships?
There are. It was very small. It paid for a portion of my books, but that was about it.
Now,
The time,
how high could you throw your baton and catch it?
ooh, I don't know how much in distance, but I could do some flips under it. And at one time, my body was capable of doing those things. But fast forward to that, I did the 4 years of college, and then I spent a lot of time like judging high schools and coming up with some high school routines and stuff like that. And at the time, I felt out of place. I was going to college for a criminal justice major, and then turns out I didn't want nothing to do with criminal justice. And my life is to stand still, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and got into bartending. And then I lived in Florence for a while, and then 2016, I visited for
Did you say Florence?
yeah, Florence, Alabama.
Oh, I thought you meant
Yeah.
Florence, Italy.
Not
Like,
Italy
wow, how did
or
you end up in
anything
Italy?
crazy. No, no, small town. But during this whole time too, my entire life, I had battled with mental health and depression, anxiety, and whatnot, and I was on a lot of medications off and on. And 2016, I decided I wanted to switch up my environment a little bit, and I wanted to get off the medication and started finding myself naturally or whatnot. And I road trip to Virginia where I seen my best friend at the time, and she took me on my very first hike. And I was just like mind blown. It was like a really awesome view, and I just couldn't believe like how beautiful Virginia was. And I'd just been stuck in this like little old town for so long. And I'm like, oh, there's just so much more to life. So fast forward to 2017, I picked everything up and I moved to Virginia, and I really got into a lot of day hiking. I did a few camping trips, nothing crazy, no like backpacking overnighters or anything in that manner. But when I was living in Daleville, that was the first time I seen these through hikers walk by. And I'm like, what are these hikers and why are their backpacks so big and what are they doing? So it's brought to my attention for the first time. And I was like, oh, that would be cool to do something like that. And spiraling on, life takes over. And I settled down in a long-term relationship. I started working at a bank. I was working at a gym. I was also bartending. I was staying really busy. And 2020 come around. We all know what happened in 2020 when things shut down. I started working from home, and I just had this huge twist in reality because I was like, oh my gosh, I've just been wasting so much time getting ready for work and commuting to work, and there's so much more to life right now. And I just felt like I had this just huge awareness where I just wanted a little bit more freedom. And at the same time, it's a blessing that I started working from home. I had an elderly dog that I was taking care of. He was absolutely my world. And fast forward to 2021, I found an online gig where I started working for myself. And I was like, all right, this is the start. I'm gonna work it side by side with my other things and gain that level of freedom so I can get out and explore and adventure some things. And started working with, it's like an affiliate program, started working with water ionizer machines. And I started to teach people how to run like Instagram ads. And before I knew, we had built this like little community, and we're all working on self-healing and mindset resources and just like being aware of the things that's going on around us. And then I realized I was completely unhappy in my 9 to 5. So by the end of 2021, I quit the 9 to 5. I let it go. And then November comes around, and my sweet Milo, he had passed away. So he was almost 17. He was 16 and a half. And after he passed away, I just went on this, I just lost it. My relationship started falling apart. I didn't know if I wanted to go back to Alabama, restart in Virginia. And I was like, there's no better way to go heal and to go find yourself than to jump in a long distance trail and jump on the AT. I was able to squeeze in one backpacking trip before the AT. And then once I started AT, I was like, let's just wing it and see what happens. And we just kind of never stopped.
Now, Puddin, we covered a lot of ground right there. I have a lot of things I want to point out and follow up on because I love your story, because I've talked to so many people where they like day hiking. They're out there among nature and the hills and trees and everything else and just having a great time. And there always seems to be this moment where they see somebody, they see a thru hiker, and they're like, what in the world is that person doing? He seems like he's really loaded up for just a day hike. And then you find out it's not a day hike. It's a month's hike. And I love the fact that kind of got into your brain and festered there for a while. You went back to work. You had multiple jobs going on. You kept really busy. And then this thing just kept on squirming in your brain. And you came to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to act on that. I'm going to do something.
Oh yeah, totally. Because when you see that, you're like, oh, that would be cool to do, but I never thought it would be in my reality. And then when the chains of unfortunate events just happened, I was like, there's no better way than to take advantage of it now.
All right. So of the jobs that you held, which was your favorite job?
Bartending.
I was going to say, there's got to be a lot of good stories with bartending. You run into people, you're talking to people who are a few drinks in. You probably had to hear some pretty good stories.
Oh yeah, I think it allowed me to live on edge without living on edge. I got to live through other people, and I got to see things on the safe side of things, and it was cool to always compete with myself on speed and how far you can go thing. So yeah, it was fun. It definitely had its moments though, staying up late, and it's a crash life cycle, but not the best healthy wise. But yeah, it was definitely fun.
Now, did you use any of your majorette skills in your bartending? Did you throw the mixer up in the air and do some flips underneath and catch it?
There was times I was practicing with a mixer. I could give it a few spins, but nothing crazy.
All right. And so as you thought, okay, what the heck? 2021, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. I'm in pain, some emotional pain. I'm going to go hike the AT. Other than that overnight hike, was it overnight or was it multiple day hike before the AT?
So before the AT, I was able to do an overnighter. I think it was 2 nights, 3 days.
Okay.
And besides that, I had done a few car camping and a few overlanding out west that you camped out of a car, but never carried my gear on my pack until that one little weekend before the AT.
And did you do any kind of research on the AT? Did you do a lot of planning?
I watched a lot of YouTube videos. Isn't that what they all do? Watch a bunch of YouTube videos and think they're a thru hiker?
That's the way they do it now. That's right.
Yeah, I totally fell in that category.
Okay. Was there a particular YouTube channel that you found most helpful?
I watched a lot of Dixie at the time. But really, I just skimmed through it all. I wanted to hear stories. I wanted to hear people's reasoning why. And then once I got out there, I realized no telling how many YouTube videos you watch. You just don't know until you do it and try it and get your feet wet.
Get your feet wet and blistered.
Yeah, totally.
Now, Puddin at the beginning of the AT was in pain. Was there a transformation by the end? Had you sorted some stuff out?
Oh yeah. I feel like the Puddin that started the AT is not the Puddin who finished the AT. I almost feel like when I learned to embrace the name Puddin, it was almost like a new identity was formed. And how I look at it too, I feel like the AT, I feel like breaks you down in those layers as like an onion. Like it peels you back layer by layer, and you start dealing with all these things that you didn't even know you had, like all this childhood trauma and this belief system and all this other crazy things. And then before you know it, because I thought I was going on the AT to find myself. And I quickly realized that you can't find what you never knew. And I'm like, wow, I never knew who I was to begin with. I was just this conditioned society, Brittany, that people told me who I was going to be or formed me into who I was going to be. And it's like now I'm learning actually things about me that I never knew existed and creating myself, I should say. You really got in tune with who I was.
You are a philosopher. You're a philosopher.
That's the first.
No one's ever called you that before?
No, that's the first.
So I love this image of peeling back the layers and going out to find yourself and realizing that you didn't even know yourself. And so
Yeah.
what was the belief system before the AT and what's the belief system now?
Ooh, I think it's really no big picture on that. I think it's little bitty kind of things. A lot of it is like society's rules kind of thing. For me, growing out my armpit hair, I felt like it was a new level of freedom and something that I'd never seen or even looked at myself about it because society's told me my whole entire life to shave that mess. You never let it grow out. So I just felt like it was like this new, just level of belief that you're like, oh wow, like why did I really not do that? Because society told me to do that.
Now, I have to tell you, Brittany, I've been growing my armpit hair out for decades, and it's liberating.
I think I'm making have you beat at this point. We'll see.
All right. Stay tuned. If you're watching this on YouTube, stay tuned for the end of the episode where we will compare armpit hair.
I love it.
All right. Puddin, how are you currently financing your adventures? What are you doing to pay the bills and to prepare for your next adventure?
Yeah, so I'm actually still working online. I work through Instagram. I work with an affiliate program. So I sell high ticket water ionizer machines. And then I teach people how to run a business from scratch on Instagram. And we teach you how to do that on automation. So how to run ads and just how to have a business running in the background. So it allows you more time to hike or adventure or do what you love or do your little hobby on the side.
Puddin, I know somebody who might be interested in talking to you about that.
Ooh, send them my way. I can help you out.
All right. Good to know. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to hear about your trip on the AT and the FT and what you've been up to recently. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Brittany McDonald, aka Puddin, no G, Puddin apostrophe, about her time out there on the trails. We've heard a little bit about the AT, but let's get into some logistics on the AT. So not a whole lot of preparation. You went out for an overnight or a couple overnights, trying out the gear. What were you expecting? And how did reality match your expectations on the AT?
Oh, this is a hard question. I almost pictured it like one of those little fun day hikes where it was just like sunshiny and you get a view and everything is just all good and dandy. And that is not how it went. My very first day, I started in a drenching thunderstorm and I didn't pack my bag right or anything. So when I set up camp for the first time, I had a wet sleeping bag, wet gear. And this went on for 4 days before I got any sunshine. So by the time I got my first day of sunshine, I was finally able to dry everything out. But yeah, the first 4 days, it was just like breaking in new shoes, blisters, didn't pack the gear that I had right, and soaking wet. Don't know how I didn't get hypothermia.
Now, only about a quarter of the people who start the AT finish the AT. Did you have any self-doubt?
I guess I had a lot of self-doubt. I never pictured myself quitting. I always told myself I was going to make it to Katahdin, but I was just going to take it as it came. And every day that was the longest I've hiked. So every day I felt like it was almost like a new record. But quitting really didn't come to mind. I talked with previous people that had done the trail, and that's one thing they said is just don't quit. Don't quit on the bad day, I should say.
Yeah, that's a quote that I like to use from Ibitat. That was his, back in the day, that was his pro tip on the podcast here, is never quit on a bad day.
Yeah. So during the AT, I took that into mentality. Days I wanted to quit, we took a lot of zeros. I feel like the trail family helped you get through things, and you find a lot of other first timers and you bond really quickly. So it's like they kept my spirits high.
Okay. Now, what was the date of your start?
April 5th,
April
2022.
5th? And when did you finish?
October 2nd.
So that's
So
almost 6 months?
almost 6 months to the dot.
Okay. And Did you start out solo? Did you go down there by yourself, or did you talk a friend into doing this with you?
Oh, I started completely solo, completely by myself. I quickly met people along the way though. But yeah, I started by myself. I quickly went into the whole tramway thing. So I was off and on with tramways through the entire AT.
And what was the reaction of your family when you told them that you were going to be hiking the AT by yourself?
My grandparents raised me, and my grandparents, they were in a full panic. They thought I was just going to get eaten by a bear. I was going to be like kidnapped or put in a trunk or something. I don't think they were expecting anything like the AT. I think they were experiencing or picturing maybe like a bunch of bushwhacking out in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere, but they're definitely a lot better now.
And did you have any concerns about being alone out there?
A little bit. There was definitely fears. I had never camped by myself or anything in that manner. And you hear scary news and TV stuff every now and then about being a female. But when I got out there, I just realized like how people look after you. And the AT is such a big trail that even though you started alone, I didn't really feel like I was alone. Like I feel like I had people and stuff. And surprisingly, the good things just kept appearing when needed to be, that you forget about all the bad stuff that you're told. And you just, I know, to me, restore my faith in humanity. As each day went on, the fears, they became less, and it just became more as a normal and more just part of the routine.
Got it. Now, how big was your tramily? And did you stay with that tramily from the very beginning all the way to the end? Or how is trail life on a long trail like that? Are people constantly coming in and out of your life? How does that work?
Yes, I feel like I was probably in a total of 4 or 5 tramways. It got started very large there at the beginning, but then quickly started dropping off by quitting and mileage and whatnot. But I feel like it definitely grows and goes back and forth based on people just coming and going and dropping off. But in a way, I feel like when I first started the AT, I actually had a little bit of a problem with this because I could tell maybe I've had some sort of abandonment issues, because it's like all of a sudden this friend comes along and it's, oh, we're both hiking, we love each other. And then all of a sudden you don't see them for like weeks and weeks at a time. And it was hard to open up there for a little bit. And then I feel like one day you just have this awareness moment that it's, wow, everything truly does happen like it's supposed to at the perfect time. And like people come into our life when they're supposed to, and they go when they're supposed to, and make it part of the story. And it's cool to see all the faces that you meet and all the people that kind of come your way.
Nice. How about your fitness? Were you ready for a 2,200-mile hike? Did you, I know you said that progressively you would have longer and longer days. How long did it take you to get your trail legs under you?
Believe it or not, I actually thought I was really in shape. I was a gym junkie, but that does not mean anything in the backpacking world. I could do a lot of pull-ups and push-ups, and I could hold the weights, but I struggled to get, I think the first few days I did 8 miles on the AT. I feel like it took me forever to get to my first 20.
Now, is there a particular story that you are fond of that you tell to a lot of people about your time on the AT?
You know, I don't know if I have one. I don't know. What are you looking for?
Typically, it's in the vein of type 2 fun. Type 1 fun, you're having fun, but you don't really talk about it afterwards. Type 2 fun, you're not having fun when it happens, but man, you love to tell that story. It's almost like a life and death story. You can't believe what happened or how bad you were suffering. But that's your go-to story when you're in a family gathering or out with friends and people ask you about the AT.
Ooh. Man, this one caught me off guard there. There was this one particular incident where we were slide packing in Virginia, and when it says 30% chance of rain, you don't think you need a rain jacket or your gear or anything, and you think it's just going to pass right over. And then it turns into this huge thunderstorm and hailstorm and a tornado. Um, that was a fun day. We didn't know how we were going to get out of that one. because I left my Garmin too, along with my other gear. We were like slack packing, so I only had half my stuff. So I didn't have anything I needed. And the ride was supposed to pick us up at this one particular road. And needless to say, by the time it thunderstormed and we're getting hit with golf ball size hail, we're like, where the hell did this come from? Yeah, that was a crazy day.
That is some definite type 2 fun. So after
it was type 2.
After 6 months, you are approaching Katahdin, or just less than 6 months, you're approaching Katahdin. What is going through your mind as you are getting close to the end?
I almost couldn't even describe my feelings. It's every day you could see Katahdin getting a little bit closer, and it's almost like I didn't know what to do. I thought I was going to start the trail and I was going to have all these answers laid out for me, and everything was just going to be so clear, and I was just going to make it and just go on with my happy life. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes you're more shaken up before than you even started. So I feel like I felt just as lost almost as I was going to Katahdin, and I just was like, I don't know what else to do. I've been walking north for 6 months, so let's just continue on walking north.
But you didn't. Did you walk all the way to Canada?
I went to the Canadian border.
Wow. So you didn't stop at Katahdin. You kept going.
I kept going. So actually between Katahdin and Millinocket is the only spot I don't have a connected footpath. And that's because when I finished the Katahdin, I went back to Millinocket and I was so torn. I was like, I don't know what to do. This is 6 month journey. It's come to an end. And it just feels like I've just been like hit in the wall, even though you see it coming for 6 months, because you're not expecting it to get here and it just be real and right there. So I was like, I want to continue walking. And at the time, it was so random and so spontaneous. Like I didn't have the whole passport. The whole shuttle thing to get me back to Katahdin was going to be like over $200, and it just wasn't in the specs of what I should be doing at that time. So I just packed my bag and walked straight from Millinocket and just started walking to the Canadian border. And I was like, we'll just figure life out when I get to the Canadian border.
So how much time did that take you?
I got to the border on October 7th. So I started walking technically October 3rd.
Oh, so just another 4 days.
Yeah.
And did you have it all figured out by the time you got there?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I ended up taking 6 weeks off. I went back to Virginia and I actually packed up my belongings and stuff. I actually hit a few day hikes on the AT and went and seen some white blazes. And it was like, what direction am I going to go or do? And I actually went out to Mount Montana. I did a few hikes out there, and then I went back to Alabama to visit family. And that's when I was like, yo, the Pinhoti's right here. Let me just jump on the Pinhoti. I'm not done. Let's just connect it back to Springer. So that's what I done. I took 6 weeks off, and then the end of November, I jumped on the Pinhoti, and I finished it like December 22nd. And then I went home for Christmas. And I got out of the single digit cold weather front that came out of nowhere. Trying to cross rivers at single digits was just insane. Then I went back and I connected the Bent McKay to Springer Mountain. And then I was like, all right, I'm still not done. So then I went back to the southern terminus of the Pinhoti and I started walking south. So I did the Alabama Road Walk. I did the Florida Connector Trail. And then I went back to Pensacola and hiked the entire Florida Trail. And then I took it on down to Key West.
Wow. So you have almost put your foot on every part of the international Appalachian Trail.
Almost.
Just missing that little piece north of Katahdin.
Yep. And I connected the road walk to the IAT, but yeah, just missing that little piece and then going into Canada. But
Puddin, that's close enough for me. Are you satisfied with that?
I'm satisfied with it. Even the fact I didn't even really know that was a thing when I wanted to walk it, I'll definitely take it. My goal was to have it to Key West within my calendar year, and I ended up doing it, I think 11 months and something. I'll take it. It's the first time through hike. I'm missing that little section, but I don't think it's the end of the world.
Tell us about hiking from Key West. Did you go northbound from Key West or did you go down to Key West?
I went down to Key West. So I did
Yeah.
south. So I started at the
So
Big Cypress and
that's
walked
right.
all the way down.
And so you're basically walking on a highway that's over the ocean, right? Connecting the different keys.
Yeah, basically. And then when I came through, it was a little too hot. Then you're supposed to be hiking through there. So I ended up having to compromise and try to do like a lot of night hiking, and it ended up getting like crazy through there.
Night hiking on a highway connecting keys.
Oh
That
yeah.
sounds a little bit crazy.
Oh yeah. It was the only way I could avoid a little bit of the sun. I just had to make it work. And I just started trying to knock out some bigger miles at the time. So yeah, we just made it work.
Now, I can't imagine there had to be too many other people doing that same hike, that direction.
Now I ran into another couple and a dog that was doing a weird flip flop in some pieces, but not the exact path that I took.
Okay.
Which every journey is a little bit different though, right?
That's right. Any issues with the swamps?
Ooh, that was my first time ever hiking through swamps. I had to get over the anxiety really quick. There was definitely a few water moccasins swimming beside me, and we got over that fear. But by the end of Big Cypress, when I made it through, it was actually completely dried up. They said that's the first time in a very long time that it was lack of water. So there at that very last stretch, I think I went over 14 miles with no water. So I actually had to push out a big day to get to the visitor center. And I remember getting to the sign. I was just like, I need water. I was like borderline dehydrated and thought I was gonna die. A lot of locals started like running up to me with like water, fruit, and bag of chips. So thank you.
Now, where do all the gators go when it dries up?
Not there. I had that same question. You can see a few gator slides.
Gator slides meaning the marks on the ground,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah,
weren't there.
no, and I've seen a lot going into because I ended at Big Cypress, so all through Florida, I've seen a lot, especially around St. Mark's. It starts getting really heavy through there. But you just kind of, I think I still have a little PTSD with the gators, to be honest, because this past go around on the Pinhoti, I know for a fact there's no gators, but yet I'm still looking for them. I'm like looking at my headlamp. I'm like, where's the red eyes?
That's a hard pass for me. I don't know how I would camp knowing that I'm in gator territory. I mean, that's a big fear.
Like anything else with hiking, it just starts to become normal after a while. Like there was this one day in Florida where it was like a really long road walk section. It was like 30 something miles. And of course, I didn't time that. So I'd already done 18 miles by the time I got to that 30. And I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? I can't just stop in the middle of a road walk section. And I was like, I'm just going to push it out. I'm going to it'll be okay. But I made it almost all the way to the end. And I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and like a 42-mile day. And I just found this little spot by the river, and you could totally hear the gators going to ham. Apparently, it was gator season. I'm not really sure, but you could hear the gators, you could hear the wild hogs, and I was just like, I don't even care at this point. We're just going to put up the tent and hope that I just live till in the morning. Like,
Wow, that is bonkers. Now, you've mentioned the Pinhoti Trail a couple times here, and I know that you have just come off the Pinhoti Trail. What have you been up to recently?
So recently, when I finished up at Florida, I decided that I really wanted something that I was going to challenge myself. I feel like what I've got out of my through hike is exactly what I've looked for in self-healing and what I've looked for in awareness levels and intuition and everything, but I never really physically pushed myself to that max. I feel like I've always played it safe on my through hikes, even though I've had some crazy adventures. I feel like my mileage has always been like reasonable, or I've worked myself up like to a really far distance. So I was like, I'm ready to just really push myself and see what I can do. So coming back from Florida, I decided to go the Pinhoti. The reason I did this was because coming from Florida, it was so flat. So I decided to run the Pinhoti North and make sure my trail legs were back in the game with the elevation and the little mountains or whatnot. And then I was going to attempt a FKT on the way back. And I was going to try to run the 350 miles in 7 days. And that was definitely an experience I wasn't expecting.
Now, hang on. Let me do a little math here. 350 miles in 7 days. That's 50-mile days.
50-mile days. Yeah.
Wow.
Needless to say, this past 7-mile stretch, I did my first 50-mile day, multiple 50-mile day, my first 60-mile day, and my first staying up more than 24 hours hiking. So I got what I wanted in the challenging myself, but unfortunately I didn't quite make the FKT. We're still dealing with a lot right now with feeling like a failure, but still getting what I was looking for. I don't think I'm done with the Pinhoti yet, but it was definitely an experience. Staying up that late with not amount of sleep. It was my first time ever hallucinating. So I was hallucinating on trail. I went wrong direction, accidentally going no bow, and I was supposed to be going so bow. I got twisted up without realizing it. Pretty sure I hiked through a haunted section. Didn't realize that till like after I did some research when I finished because it freaked me out a little bit. I just thought I like stayed up too late. But I made it all the way to the very end, and I got twisted up in this drenching thunderstorm and spent 5 hours bushwhacking and accidentally slipped off a little waterfall bluff area. And when I finally made it to the road, I thought I was more hurt than what I was. And just being mentally out of it, I couldn't make a good decision. And I ended up tapping out with 8 miles to go. So
Now, when you say a waterfall and a bluff, how far did you fall?
I didn't fall too far. It was Terrapin Hill. Not sure if you're familiar with it or not. It was midnight, like 12:40. 5 hours of bushwhacking on this crazy embankment with 7 days of no sleep, delirious, hallucinating, military crawling under blowdowns and trying to jump over them. And I just somehow kept getting twisted up. I didn't fall too far. It was more like a slide. And then I like hit a rock and bounced. But at the time I couldn't tell, like my body was just in like survival mode. I thought maybe I had like really messed up a rib or something. And I just completely shut down.
Now, I talked to Kenneth Posner, aka Barefoot Ken, very recently, and he says the key is not to stare directly at the hallucinations. Just keep track of them out of the corner of your eye. Oh, did I lose you? There you are. Still there, Puddin?
Oh, there you are. You froze a little bit.
Yeah. I was talking to Ken Posner, aka Barefoot Ken, and he says the secret is not to stare directly at the hallucinations. Just keep track of them on the corner of your eyes.
That's good to know. And it's so crazy how like the hallucinations will be based off your fears too. Like it all started when I seen a rattlesnake on trail at night because I've never seen one at night. I was like, what is this thing doing at night right here on the trail? But anyways, it was just this massive rattlesnake. Then after that, every leaf became a copperhead. Every tree trunk became like a bear cub. And it would be like so real. Every stick would just come up and it would be like, oh, I just got snake bit.
It's like, did you watch Harry Potter? Any of the Harry Potter movies? Yeah. It's like that cabinet, right? Your worst fear comes out of the cabinet, depending on who you are and what you're thinking about. So that's very interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now,
Totally.
So 7 days, you're shooting for 50 miles a day. What were your actual mileages? Day 1, day 2, day 3, etc.
So I averaged right at 50 the first few days. And then I actually messed up one day and actually cut it 20 miles too short and I accidentally overslept. And I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to play catch up. And somehow I did. I pulled like a 60 that next day and then I just didn't sleep. So then I just still hiked. So honestly, I can't tell you my biggest day. I know the longest amount of sleep that I've had was 5 hours. And then I had a few cat naps in the middle of those days. And I know when I tapped out with eight miles to go, it was like 12:40 at night and I had until 2:02 a.m. And that would have beat it under the record, the 7 days and 18 hours. So I don't know how close I would have got. I know that was really too close. So
Now, the whole FKT thing is a direct comparison, right? You're comparing yourself to whatever the current fastest time is, and you're trying to beat that. And so if you don't get it, obviously there's going to be some disappointment, some feelings of I didn't succeed. But if you take that out of the equation, you just look at what you did, what you accomplished over those 6-7 days. If you compare it against yourself and what you've done in the past, it's definitely a win for you. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the perspective that you have to. We're so hard on ourselves at times, but I did get exactly what I was looking for, to challenge myself, the first timers for myself. And I know that I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I ever could be. And I've learned a lot. And I think that's what matters too, is I don't necessarily think it's a failure if you learn. And I learned a lot. And for me, I've never even ran a marathon or like a 5K. So this is just brand new to me. So let's just see what's out there.
If anybody listening out there, if there's a runner or I don't know, some other type of athlete out there that is saying she hasn't run a marathon, she hasn't run a 5K, she just walked for 60 miles, how big a deal? I challenge that person to try and walk 60 miles. You try and walk 60 miles and you won't be walking the next day. That will do a number on you.
Oh, totally. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm still recovering a little bit, but I had definitely had some mixed thoughts going through there, because I was like, I noticed when I was bushwhacking in that 5 hours, that seemed like forever. And I just thought I had this whole thing in a bag, and I had all these obstacles that I had come across and overcome. And now I'm back at the top and I'm still in the game. And here I am just like getting done with this drenching thunderstorm and hanging on to this embankment. And then I was like going through these mixed emotions. I'm never going to hike again. And you just wait till I come back and I get to do this again. So it was just torn between this like inner beast that's wanting to come out and then just sitting on the sidelines.
That is the perfect segue to my next question. What is the next big adventure for Puddin?
That's, I think right now, to be determined. I was really set on doing the CDT Sobo and leaving mid-June. I think I'm going to take it easy for the next few weeks and see. I feel like since I started hiking, I really haven't had time to even reflect and really think about my hikes a lot. And I feel like now after this run, it's forced me to sit down a little bit, and I'm seeing things a lot differently. I think we'll have to stay tuned to see what's next for Puddin. I know the Pinhoti is not off the list. I am definitely going back to finish those 8 miles so I can call it a through hike, so I can say I yo-yoed. And I see that FKT town coming. I don't think I'm going to let it go. I came too close. But.
Okay. Fantastic. Hey, Puddin, you know where we are right now?
We're on John Muir's freaking podcast.
That's right. We sure are. But we're also at that point of the episode.
Hiking hacks.
Hiking hacks. Yes, it's time for Puddin to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. What do you have for us?
Ooh, this is kind of difficult. Trail wisdom, is it mindset?
Could be mindset, it could be a tip, a trick, it could be a mistake that you've made that you don't want others to make.
No. We'll say duct tape fixes majority of everything. So duct tape on your trekking pole. I did not believe in that at first, but you'd be surprised with how much duct tape patches my gear has, and it tends to hold up. I feel like duct tape comes like you need it the most random times. And then something else is hike your own hike. Trust your journey. I feel like we get caught up. I can say right now I'm in this comparison game of numbers and mileage, and sometimes sit back and reflect and think about what you did do. I know for me, we just talked about this failure of the FKT. I feel like what I did push my body through. I've had some moments. I learned a lot, and sometimes it's not all about the mileage or comparing to other people. I think the biggest thing is to not forget it's your hike. Don't forget it's your journey and what you're seeking to do and your why.
Well said, Britt. Said. So there you have it. We are just about done here. I hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Puddin. I want to thank her for joining us this week. Puddin, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I'm up to date on Instagram, and I'm currently growing the YouTube, and they're both hiking with Puddin. All one word, all lowercase.
Is there a G in hiking?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Hiking has a G. Puddin does not.
Okay, G in hiking, not in pudding. Good clarification. All right. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips that you want to share with me, you can do that at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. Also, no G.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail, Puddin. And when we're not, we need to
That's
find
right.
a way to get our adventure fix. Britt, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be a book or a movie or a documentary. What do you have for us? Any recommendations?
There you are.
Yes. Do you have any recommendations for a book, a movie, documentary about outdoor adventure?
Oh, sure. My favorite is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I really enjoy his perspective on life and how he throws the wrong turns in our life sometimes as red lights or green lights. And I feel like a lot of that happens while hiking too. Like you get a lot of life lessons. And sometimes when you're out there and you get to go off your intuition in a snap, you got to decide if it's a green light or red light and you get to create it. So I really enjoyed that one. And then anything else, I feel like I'm a law of attraction girl. So I listen to a lot of mindset, Abraham Hicks. And then if you're looking for a documentary, I really like The Alpinist.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. And I've heard a lot of great things about Matthew McConaughey and Greenlight, but this is the first time it's appeared on the podcast. So congratulations on that. Well done.
Oh, nice. Finally.
Have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss today?
Ooh, what did we miss? I'm not sure if you've missed anything, but I will say your support system matters. I feel like if you do anything absolutely crazy or you need to like something first time, long distance, I really feel like having a support system. I'm big on sometimes not letting people know what I do and I want to do it all to myself. And I feel like sometimes it's a lot easier with other people and the support system can go a really long way. So I don't feel like there's any shame in having a good support system. And I feel like that's one thing I wish I would have had more of on this round and get you a good support system.
Totally agree. That's awesome. All right. We are finished. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Britt. Wish you the very best in your future adventures, whatever those may be. And we hope you'll consider coming back at some point and sharing some more epic stories. As we close up, do you have any shout outs to friends and family?
Oh, definitely friends and family, all my close ones that's helped me through this journey, all the trail angels. I feel like I couldn't have made it without everyone coming together. Yeah.
Okay.
People know who they are.
Nice. If you don't name them, that means you don't forget anybody. So that's very smart as well.
You pick up. I like that.
Yep. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you just walked 60 miles and haven't slept in more than 24 hours. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Touche.